Millions of people have lost weight with personalized plans from Noom. Like Evan, who can't stand salads and still lost 50 pounds.
Salads generally for most people are the easy button, right? For me, that wasn't an option. I never really was a salad guy. That's just not who I am. But Noom worked for me.
Get your personalized plan today at Noom.com. Real Noom user compensated to provide their story. In 4 weeks, the typical Noom user can expect to lose 1 to 2 pounds per week. Individual results may vary.
Welcome all to a chapter of my life with author and writer Mr. Dan Abrahams. Dan, before we get into the great season, 1971-72, let's have a bit of your backstory, how you became a writer, why you want to become a writer, and why you wanted to write this book in particular. Because if I was going to write a book, it would be probably the book that I would want to write as well. So I want to.
That's lovely to
hear. Your take.
Well, why I became a writer, a long conversation with my dad, wasn't going anywhere, and he said, you can either be an English teacher or a journalist. I asked who drank the most. He said journalists, and off to university I went. The long and short and the tall of it. 28, I think I've been in the print since my mid-20s. I'm 53 now. Stints all over the place, nationals, whatever. Longest stint, Sunday Mirror for about 10 years, loved it. Sports journalist by trade, and I've done all the others, news, I've done all the sort of whatever areas of journalism, but preferred the sport. And just, I don't know, with the writing thing, I think from writing things as a child, I just got on with it, and then it just went by like everything else. And then started writing sort of fiction pieces and stuff, and then was seconded, I suppose, and that's probably the wrong word, but just asked to do a ghostwriter a rugby league book for a squadron leader in the RAF who I befriended. He's a very good friend of mine. And that went down a storm, sold out of its about 7,000 or 8,000 copies, I think. And then this one, I was with 71-72, just wanted to, I'd have some self-published sort of fiction pieces. And just had the season. It was just one of those things that had been there forever. I just had numerous conversations with my father now, God bless him, who's passed away, and uncles, and just one of those seasons that just sticks in your mind from, I mean, everything. The Leeds United shirt with the Centennial FA Cup on. It's just everything that sort of seemed to be about this season. It just kept calling to me, So I sat down and started to pen it, and then, it just sort of rolled on. It became not so much a labour of love. I just loved doing it. Writing it and so on, and it all sort of started to fall into place, So
I have pre-ordered the book,
and here we are. Yeah. Oh, brilliant! Thank you very much. Very kind. Thank you.
Yeah, I have pre-ordered it. How can other people pre-order it? How are you selling the book first and foremost, because that's what we want to get across to people. Buy your book.
It's through Pitch Publishing.
Yep.
So in major sort of outlets, Waterstones and so on and so forth, and Amazon, of which it's in I think it was last week. It was in the top 20 new hot releases. So it's a picture fairly big, so it should be available all over the place really, or just go onto the Pitch website, pitchpublishing.co.uk, I think it is, and you go from there. But I mean, a lot of people will just order it through Amazon. I suppose that seems to be the way nowadays. But I know it's available through Waterstones and other sort of WH Smiths and other outlets like that really. So 71-72, football's greatest season with a question mark, but it is. There's no question about it.
And when we look at the 1971-72, we're going to start at the beginning and at the end. Derby County won the league. On 58,
having lost their final game, which was a bit of an unusual one. Normally that sends the panic button, panic going. But yeah. So go on. Sorry, I was interrupted. Sorry.
Was that game against Manchester City?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Rodney Marsh.
And of course, City had the signing of Rod from my club QPR.
Yeah.
And has sort of been blamed for that, but to be honest, I mean, I don't know. I mean, but they'd lost. He went in there, didn't he, towards the end of it? But they were. I don't think it was. He seems to want to take the blame for it, which is a bit of a weird one. But if memory serves, they lost Corrigan. I think it was about 7 or 8 games when Rodney turned up. 3 of those they'd lost. I think they'd lost 3 the previous run up to those 7 games, and they lost 3 of that 7. He was banging them in. Rodney was doing all right. He scored when they beat Derby in the last game. But it's just, I think he quite likes to take the fall for it for some for some reason. I don't understand why. But yeah, and it was famously Leeds having played the Centenary Cup final against Arsenal. Then 2 days later was a player match that wouldn't go their way, and they wouldn't win the double. Which nowadays, 2 days. As a lifelong QPR fan, 12 days to give to Liverpool to play their final match after playing the European Cup match, it was the UEFA Cup final, is madness. But 2 days, is insanity, and it gives fuel to the fire that the FA hated Leeds, and Revie. So you wouldn't think of that now; it just wouldn't happen.
I don't think the FA did. If I'm playing
No,
devil's
but you know what I
advocate,
mean.
but I know the narrative would be. But
and that really adds fuel to the fire.
But in those days of the 70s, and I've talked to a lot of players that played in the 70s, because that is my era, that's where I wouldn't say my expertise lies, but that's when I was a kid growing up. And started loving football and watching Match of the Day. And it wasn't uncommon for any player of any club in those days to play over 60 games, because we had the Texaco Cup, we had the Watney's Cup, we had the Anglo-Italian Cup, and the run into the end of the season. I remember doing a My 70s interview with Paul Fletcher, and I said, my word, Paul, you played something like 9 games in 20 days at the end of your season in 74, and it wasn't uncommon. So playing that and squeezing it in, it was. But going back to Rodney, Rodney did go there, and there's a wonderful series that Dennis Waterman hosts, and it's that Match of the 70s. I don't know if you're familiar with it. And there's the Rodney features in it in that season, and Big Mal is saying when he come from QPR, he just wasn't fit, and he used to throw up after every training session. I remember Bernard Manning, the comedian, said of Rodney Marsh, he was like a lighthouse in the desert. He was big, bright, and useless. But Rodney Marsh was the player then, that if you're Manchester City and you're looking at a final piece of the jigsaw, it was Rodney Marsh, and it didn't quite happen for him that season.
They say that there was a lot of he would slow the ball up or wouldn't move it fast enough for the way that City played and stuff like that. And you've got to think he was at a QPR side then that was sinking. That was the end of that sort of famous side for us, under stock and whatever. And so he would have been the sort of prince and able to do what he wanted down there, really. He could have run the games at his own pace. So it's probably perfectly reasonable to think he turned up there and they were all guns blazing at City, and he was strolling about the pitch. But I think when you lose a keeper like Corrigan and stuff like that as well, it's probably not all his fault. But I do find it odd that he quite likes to put his hand up and go, it was me.
I think
which is a very Rodney thing to do, I think.
I think Rodney would always like to be the pantomime villain, no matter what. He likes that, doesn't he? He likes that attention, Rodney. And Francis Lee, of course, one of his strike partners at Manchester City, ran out the league's leading goal scorer with 33 that season. I believe about 9 was penalties, and Francis probably won most of them.
Yeah, he liked to fly through the air, shall we say. He was very good at he's good at taking them as well.
Yeah, he was.
So, why not? It's in your armoury, I suppose. It's all within the game, isn't it? So
it's certainly.
It was a hell of a season. It was a hell. Some of the players, the management that were going up about it. You got Shankly, Clough, Revie, Allison. These are still heavyweights of the game now, if you know what I mean. Their names are so unbelievable sort of people there backing their sides, and the closest title race in history. I think it's still valid. So it was a pretty big, pretty stellar season for those names. And of course, my favourite thing with Clough is that was the start of all that, wasn't it? The start of the real sort of rise of him. And I always remember that I believe you may know this. I was actually sort of wanting to ask you in a way. He gave that pre-match talk. Was it before the replay of the League Cup and against Liverpool, and sat all the Forest players round in a circle with the ball in the middle, And he walked in with about 30 seconds to go, put his hand on the ball and said, if you love this as much as it loves you, you'll beat this lot tonight. And they did. And that's the best pre-match coach management talk ever, if it's true, in my opinion. So,
But that was Brian Clough. Brian would keep
Clough,
things very, very simple. He didn't mix his words, as you say.
No.
Those heavyweight managers that we had, and Derby, as I say, won it on 58. Leeds second, 57. Liverpool third. 57, Manchester City fourth, 57. You're absolutely spot on. It was so tight, the tightest. And the reason why I would have loved to have wrote that book is it was my first football season. It was the first time that I started really watching Match of the Day, understanding it. My team, Birmingham City, got to the semi-final of the FA Cup, and they also got promoted on the last day of the season with a Bob Latchford goal away at Orient. So I was really getting into football. And you're right, I mean, we've mentioned some of the managers, but some of the players that we had, the King of Loftus Road followed Rodney in there. And there was a number of players that wouldn't pick up that number 10 shirt, but Stan had it, and he says, well, who's Rodney Marsh anyhow?
Yeah, basically, exactly. And then look what he went on to do. So, I mean, those Mavericks, as they're known. I mean, this was the start of that. Rodney sort of being, and Curry knocking around and whatever. But you still had, I mean, Frank, bless him, has passed away. Frank Worthington recently. I mean, they were the book. There's so many bits with that sort of. It's very sad to have written about the dementia side of it. Stan and just all these players are just wonderful players. And then you get to reflect on the fact of their, the England careers that just weren't and never did them any justice, and so on and so forth. But they were, there were some fantastic players in that. I mean, in the summer, Liverpool tried to sign Worthington. Shankly tried to sign Worthington. I've can't never quite see him in that team. And I know they had Ray Kennedy, who was a stroller, but Worthington was just a different league. I mean, that guile and skill, I never thought would have fitted into the mechanics of a Liverpool side, but we never got to find out. I mean, we had those guys. There were other extremes. I mean, there's Graham French that I mentioned in the book. I mean, the man was I think the bet was to beat all 10 out players on the pitch. He had a bet with somebody and he did it twice. Only beat 7, so went back and beat the others. Ended up being arrested for shooting somebody, and never followed sort of things from there. And I believe, I know this isn't, I believe, as I'm covering the book, he came out of prison and was told to go to Reading, and Reading preferred a younger man who wasn't as wild, called Robin Friday. And I know from listening to your podcast about Robin Friday, so you couldn't have gone, a more extreme version sort of thing. So,
but again, those players, they had character. Every team had their characters, and whereas, it wasn't the fact that the FA didn't like Leeds, but it was the fact that the England managers didn't like the Mavericks, and more so with Revy than Ramsey. But they wasn't Ramsey players. When England won the World Cup, of course, he played without wingers. They were a very workmanlike team. In fact, he was just really trying to integrate some of the under-23 players into the team when he got sacked in 1973.
Yeah, and that would have been Frank. That would have been Worthington.
Frankie played in that Portugal game, I believe.
And that was that side of that's when it. But they just never got there. And I always felt, I mean, I've sat through the infamous sort of Italy away game when Gentile wasn't particularly gentile with our man Stan, and I mean it was carnage. They had some fantastic players on the pitch, England. No tactics, obviously. Trevor Brooking, Shannon, I mean Stan. But it was chaos. Absolute chaos. I mean, running around everywhere, giving each other, just trying to sort of give each other the ball and work out where to run to, because there was no, you could tell there was no organisation in it. Revy just thought, well, I'll throw them all on and see what happens, and having not given them any chance, just sort of plucked them out and said, go to Italy. All right, they only needed a draw. But I quite clearly remember the ball being put through to Stan, and that running, and in my books would have scored, and Jimmy Greenough gets in the way. What are you doing up here? You know,
Brian Greenough, it was Jimmy's brother. Because he
Sorry.
played centre midfield that day with Trevor Cherry. So
Yeah,
instead of Hudson and Curry playing there,
yeah,
Revy
yeah,
decided that Greenough and Cherry were better
yeah,
options. But
yeah.
that was the common thread through the English national team,
Yeah.
where I mean, I do a regular podcast with Uddy, My Life, My Music,
Hmm.
and Uddy says the record that reminds him of those days is Sending the Clowns by Frank Sinatra. And and that's pretty much what they did. Instead
Yeah,
of sending
yeah,
in the top players
yeah,
and our
yeah,
maverick players that would have made a huge difference.
yeah.
And people often say, well, we never won nothing in the 70s. We didn't, because we didn't play those players.
Well,
We
yeah, we
let the
didn't
players
try.
down.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we didn't try. And how are you going to know unless you try? But yeah, I mean, I think my sort of issue with all that is that thing where people say, well, you'll never win anything with players like that. I think that's a reflection on the players who aren't as good as the
Mhm.
Mavericks. You know, just to get them to step their game up and learn what's going on rather than just going through the numbers. You know, but hey, I mean, English football has always been that way, and in some cases probably always will be. But that was I mean, what a period, and what quality players. You know, and I mean, as you mentioned Huddy there, I mean, brilliant player. You know, Worthington, Bowles, Marsh, they're just a Curry, fantastic player. I mean, I'm proud to say that we had all three of them in a row at Loftus Road. We even put Curry and Stan on the pitch at the same time. I think only we could do that. So, you know, which is we haven't won anything either, but we played those two on the same pitch for 90 minutes once.
But again, you don't mind not winning when you're being entertained,
Yes,
and they
yeah,
were the entertainers. How
yeah,
does the book open up? What's the dynamics of the book? Because you don't just touch upon the 71-72 season in
no,
England, you do
no.
go abroad as well, don't you? So,
Yeah, because there were gambling issues and match fixing issues and all sorts of things across Germany and stuff like that. I like to, you know, the game was, I mean, it was a global game, and
yeah.
there were some fantastic incidents going on. I mean, but a lot of it, I think the reason why I went that way was I wanted to cover everything. I didn't want it to be a book about, you know, one sort of particular player, one particular, you know, even though it's about a season, I wanted it to be about everything. I cover 5-a-side tournaments in there, all the leagues, everything else. There's a notes from abroad section and stuff which covers it, you know, either international or well, yeah, I mean, it goes as far as South America and everywhere really. But there's it's sort of a DFB, you know, match fixing and all that sort of stuff which I wanted to touch on, and and I just there seem to be so many links between our game and the game. I mean, the game abroad. And when we mentioned the Mavericks, I mean, Gunter Netzer is
Yeah.
mentioned it. I mean, you know, what a player!
Yeah.
He didn't fit into the German team.
I know.
So these things sort of I started to realise that there's mirroring itself across the world with these incidents, and then it really started to fall into place that it was just excitement everywhere and fantastic things and then unusual matches. I mean, you know, Fritz going across to having sort of sunk England for Austria and then becoming an NFL kicker for the Dallas Cowboys in the season of the book. You know, that's so there was all these unusual points that started to crop up for me, and I kept thinking, the incident with Netzer was just unbelievable. I mean, you know, he hardly played at all, and another number 10, which is you know, some sort of strange link with this whole thing, and so the games, as far, I mean, and of course with England not going abroad, but we didn't need to. We had the flair here, we had the excitement here, so I decided just to cover as much as I could, and then all the little stories became bigger stories. You know, there were so many small pieces. You just thought, this is where the gold is. I mean, and say the world's footballers came to us. Pele here with Santos playing, sort of trying to earn their money for paying for him. You know, playing at Villa and whatever else. 50,000 odd people there for that sort of stuff. You had Cruyff kicking around, and you know, so the players were here. The game was on our doorstep as well, and we had our fabulous players, and then there was so much going on within our own sort of league and everything else. It just seemed to start to unravel and not, well, just reveal itself. And I was like a kid in a sweet shop, really. You know, I mean, when you've got that sort of edit and stories that are going on, and then I wanted to try and attach it with some human sort of stories, and started to ask kids who are around. I mean, just a little bit too young, but I remember it and reading about the season and stuff like that. But to actually be sort of living it, like yourself, whatever. So I started asking family and friends and older brothers and whatever, people's older brothers are coming down. It's just started giving me the stories, you know, Roy Race, the ABC One cards, the Centenary Cup coins, just the stories one after the other. I my favourite is the Action Man kit. That had to be changed from the Tottenham and West Ham so that the goal could be scored or cleared in that particular game. One figurine, two kits, you know. And these are sort of things that I then went through later on in life, but just seem to be have so much colour to them. And I just completely fell in love with that side of it, and that really linked it all together for me. That really gave it the human interest side of it, as well as the players who were gods from Smithy and all that lot for Leeds and down the line, you know, to Stan, the starter Stan and stuff like that, really. So there was plenty for me to choose from.
You referenced Gunter Netzer, and
Yes.
Gunter and Germany come to Wembley on the 29th of April 1972 in the quarter-final of the European Championships, and done a job on us. I remember as a kid watching that game and my dad pointing out, son, watch this fella, Gunter Netzer, he's different class. And Gunter wasn't he? He absolutely run the show that day.
Yeah. I mean, that was the start of the however many years of her it has been.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's only just started to go right. But so there's that type of thing as well, which just, you know, you could put a pin in any of this stuff and it links to today. I found as well. There's I mean, the England-Germany thing goes on. I mean, you had the grounds. I mean, look at the grounds. I mean, Sheffield United had decided to get rid of cricket at their three-sided ground, and they would have cricket played there in '71. And then they wanted to sort of get rid of the three sides of it and put up a stand, and the stand went up, bankrupted the club was in trouble, etc., etc. You're now going to lose Goodison Park. Everton's gone, the ground with the church in, etc., etc. All these things seem to sort of have some relevance to that season, to the modern game. I mean, there was the referees' revolution. I think I've actually written this down, the Shankly quote. The trouble with referees is they know the rules, but they don't know the game. You know, look at VAR. Yeah. So it just kept slapping me around the face, Paul. Every time I looked at it, I thought, oh my God, there's something. And I'd fall in and, like a child, get in there, have my fill, and then walk away and think, my God, that's unbelievable. And the biggest problem is having to go back and check fact upon fact, because I kept thinking some of this can't be right. Yeah. This stuff can't have been happening. But it was every other game there was something amazing going on, you know. And so that
was the 70s.
But
with those three in particular, Clough, Shankly, and Big Mal.
Yeah.
What three characters. The press, it must have been like manna from heaven, because they were all good for the sound bites. They were the king of the quotes. In fact, Malcolm Allison got a touchline ban in that season, and he said, I got a lifetime ban, and a train robber's only got 25 years. I mean, it was ridiculous. I mean, he'd be in the bath, wouldn't he, with the, you know, with the girls, Malcolm, and, you know, the fedora and the cigar, and they were larger than life. We had Ian Storymore, who turned up at Derby, then he ended up at Manchester United. Again, that was Brian Clough, young man. You've signed for Derby County Football Club. And like Ian Storymore signed there, so he signed. The problem is, the Forest directors wouldn't sign for the transfer. So Clough, again, running his mouth and telling everybody that Storymore was a Derby player, absolutely incorrect. Forest wouldn't sign it. That's what happened.
Yeah.
You know, crazy season.
Yeah, but he wouldn't be bad. I mean, I'm very proud to say that the famous foot-in-mouth footage, you know, with Cloughie.
Yeah.
You know, you need bloody shooting from there, young man. That's
exactly. Yeah.
My dad did that. That was my dad's footage.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah. He was.
Get in there. That's what I pay you for.
That's it. Yeah. You need bloody shooting. He filmed that. Yeah.
but again,
it's not a match of the day, so there was a lot of links with the game
yeah.
from that sort of side as well.
But when Derby won the league, it's like, well, if the people from Derby don't back us, we're going to move everything lock, stock and barrel to another place where they will. But that was Brian Clough. I mean,
Yeah.
people don't understand and realise what those managers were like. I mean,
No.
there's nothing. I mean, okay, you've got the heavyweights today, Klopp
Yeah.
and Mourinho, if you like. Pep Guardiola.
Yeah.
You know, you've got the managers that come in here, and Conte's sniffing around again. We know all the top managers, but they had got nothing compared to the managers of the 70s. I mean, they had more front and arrows, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lovely bit with when I spoke to John Motson for the forward, chatting about him, he quite clearly, and again, another person, as you mentioned, Clough, he puts his little impersonation, someone puts an impersonation. They had to ring him from sports night, and he was away with the team. I think they'd taken to the Scilly Isles. And of course, it's very nice of you to ring me, Bob. Oh, I was expecting you to call and all this sort of stuff, and milking the whole thing for you've decided to call me. I'm only the winner of the league and Derby and all that sort of just playing it all the way along. But aren't they fabulous? They're just fantastic characters, and I miss them.
I think we
I've been able
all
to walk
do.
around with them a bit, in the book. I've been able to spend some time with them, which has been lovely,
We all miss them, and football isn't the same without them, and football will never be the same as what it was in the 70s. We had the first All-English European final as well in the Fairs UEFA Cup. Wolves versus Tottenham.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there was loads of bits like that. I mean, little pieces you mentioned. I sound like I'm mentioning Leeds a lot, but I was just thinking about that. There were these matches. I mean, as well, but there was the sort of the start of the merchandising stuff with Leeds. I mean, tracksuit tops with the names on the back and the garter on the socks and all this sort of stuff. I mean, they started that. But that season,
do you know?
It was in the semi-final FA Cup.
But do you know who started that for Leeds United?
No, I was hoping. I was sort of thinking about it last night. I was hoping you might know because
Paul Trevelyan.
Genius.
Paul Trevelyan done all that.
Okay.
That fella, I'm telling you, he is an absolute legend and a genius. And it was Alan Clark that told me that about Paul Trevelyan's input to Leeds United and what he done for Leeds United. Absolutely. And Alan says to me, because of course the League Cup final was Stoke City versus Chelsea. George Easton, who scored the winning goal.
2-1 to the Potters, but surely it's the semi-final we have to mention rather than the final. Those Stoke fans would say, well, the final. But I mean that Bobby Moore in goal, Banksy saving a penalty, Bobby saving a penalty. It's not Bobby, I don't know if I know him, and then conceding one. I mean, the 4 games, and I've actually made the point of stat. There's 115,000 fans over 4 games. That's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
And of course, and Stoke won through. And I think they called this. The Sun reports that this is the greatest match I've ever seen. And I'm not one to go over the top, but this was it. It had everything. I mean, Bobby Moore going into goal, and then of course, then they go through the final and win it 2-1. Yeah, for the first ever bit of silverware.
And I think to this day, still the only bit of silverware.
Yeah.
But Alan Hudson was the closest person to George Easton when he scored and he wheeled away. In fact, Alan's got that picture up in his flat in Chelsea.
Right.
Because as he didn't at the time, we didn't appreciate it, but he was the next George Easton. Tony Waddington didn't buy Alan Hudson. He bought a young George Easton. So as George scored that goal and he was turning away, the next one to him, Alan Hudson, he was going to be filling his shirt. And Alan's dad used to take Alan down to Arsenal to watch George Easton when he was a kid. He was one of his heroes. In fact, he says one of the hardest games I ever had was training the day before the game against George Easton. What a player he was. What a player.
Yeah. I mean, that in itself, there's quite a nice little substance because I've obviously been contacting certain people from magazines for reviews, and the magazine will remain nameless just in case the poor sod gets a bit more stick for it. But they gave the book to one of their reporters who's a Stoke fan because
Yeah.
they said it would remind him of the glory days, which I thought was a terrible thing to say, but I hoped it did anyway. I hope it puts a smile on his face.
I think it will always put a smile on the face of Stokies because it was,
Yeah,
what a team that they had in them
yeah,
days. They had a
yeah,
great team, and then it got better when Alan Hudson joined.
yeah,
They
yeah. What
almost,
wouldn't know? Let's be
yeah,
honest.
they almost. I mean, I think they finished fourth the one
Yeah,
season,
yeah,
and had it not been for four broken legs, they could have gone on and won the league, and
yeah.
they were very close to really getting amongst the top dogs, the perceived top dogs
Yeah,
of
yeah,
English
yeah, yeah.
football.
Well,
But back in those days, Dan, we had loads. I mean, Everton won
yeah,
the first one in the 70s.
yeah,
But we had Stoke City were up there, Queen's Park Rangers were up there,
yeah,
Sheffield United, Derby County
yeah,
won it a
yeah.
couple of times. We had so many. Ipswich Town, of course, was another
Yes,
great side. We probably had 8 or 10 that could have won
yeah,
any of those leagues,
yeah, yeah,
any of those seasons in
yeah,
that decade.
yeah. I mean, the only so you're absolutely right, and that's what made it so exciting. The
Yeah,
only real sort of bit that again that struck me with the 71, 72 was that this was really the sort of the start of the big guns. I mean, Liverpool and whatever else from there, and it was the sort of the steady rise of those sort of clubs. And again, I think the four teams battling it out would have been the last time for for whenever that happened. I mean, Liverpool, QPR was two teams and so on and so forth. So it
mm,
started to get whittled down. But you're absolutely 100% right. There was always a team that wasn't a Manchester United, an Arsenal, a Liverpool that came through. Ipswich kicked my lot. Ipswich definitely being one of them. Sheffield United. I mean,
yeah.
they were brilliant that season. And so it was just again just more exciting yeah, and everybody had a chance if they got stuck in or played with flair as with some of the clubs did. I mean, a Sheffield United team to have Tony Curry in is now they're seen as a workmanlike team. But to imagine them at Tony Curry pinging the ball about all over the place, completely opposite to what they're seen as now.
But Manchester United wanted Tony to replace Bobby Charlton.
Is that right?
Yeah, Tony wouldn't go. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, interesting,
Yeah,
interesting.
and you do mention Trevor Hockey
Yeah,
in your book as well.
yeah.
Smelliest feet ever. The smelliest feet ever. Tony Curry used to room with Hockey. I mean,
Right.
what he said,
The man of many clubs.
what a great lad he was,
Right.
and he
Yeah.
said
Yeah.
what a player he was as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
interior of his car was something like the Tony Curry. You look at the interior. I think it was like velvet interior.
Oh.
He was a real kind of extrovert person.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
TC
Yeah.
did say, yeah, absolutely, smelliest feet.
Oh, right. Right.
Five-a-sides, they were a great tournament. And again, on Sports Night, because Sports Night
Yes.
was
Yeah.
such a
Used to get
popular
a.
programme, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Used to get a lot of coverage of that. I mean, I think that possibly is the second piece of silver we've ever won at QPR. One of them. But yeah, that was and all of it seemed to. And I wanted to get that in the book. I wanted to get sort of just as much lot of those things in because they were, even down to quiz ball and things like that. These were taken quite seriously.
Yeah,
I mean, people would flock because you didn't have it wasn't blanket coverage now. You couldn't see football all the time, and it was a lot of people still didn't have telly, so to get anything football related was great. And that sort of I just wanted to tap that in and get that across and show the sort of you'd pile around somebody's house to watch a match and just be thankful that you got the highlights package or the five-a-side thing or whatever it would be. There was something and there was a joy in it. So now I think people sort of expect it to be on or whatever, and it was just a different, obviously a different era, but just a different feeling really
but
for
again,
me.
black and white TVs we had in
Yeah,
those days.
yeah,
72 was my first FA Cup final that I watched.
right,
Watched it round my aunt's in colour. We hadn't got a
yeah,
colour TV.
right,
And Alan said to me, scoring the winning goal in that centenary FA Cup final
yeah.
was an absolute joy because it
Oh, that
was
is
the
a
one and
goal.
the Queen was there. And he said as the ball had come over from Mick Jones as he crossed it,
Yeah,
he was going to volley it. but the ball,
Really?
yeah. But the ball just dipped, so he threw himself at it, in the diving header. But
Yeah. What a
he got
goal.
caught with I think it was Simpson. He trod on his fingers on round
Right.
about the halfway line. So if you want to rewind that and look at it, and then he seen Billy running past him, and he thought, well, I better get into the box here.
Yeah.
Billy
Yeah.
Browne was running past him, but yeah, again, phenomenal stories, and that Leeds team. I
Yeah.
mean,
Well, I mean,
what a team they
oh, I
were!
mean,
What a team!
they were, and but also there's something admirable about that side because they failed, if you know what I mean. They didn't win everything, they didn't, but they were in
They
it,
were
and they
going for the
scraped back.
treble though every
Yeah,
year. That was
yeah,
the
yeah,
problem.
yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
but it was amazing that something makes them more human to me. That you know that they didn't win all the games and whatever. Which I don't know. There's something more impressive about that. I can't quite put my finger on it, but I mean in that match, poor old Jones was busted up at the end of the
Yeah, it
game with
was.
his
Yeah,
collarbone gone and carrying him up to. Just even then, it didn't end. You know, the drama was carrying on, and the famous stories were carrying on. You know, for some reason, life was cramming as much stuff as it could into that season, sort of thing. So, you
absolutely.
know,
In the foreign games, the Italians in particular, what a load of dirty watsits they were.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
Clough
yeah,
had his problems, hadn't he? I don't want
yes,
to talk
yeah,
to you. You're a load of cheating
yeah. That's
bastards.
right.
Slammed
That's
the door
right.
against
Yeah,
Juventus, and that was it. That was
but he was
Cloughy.
right.
Yeah, he
But he was
was.
right.
In
Yeah, he was
fact,
absolutely right.
Capello spat in the face of Phil Parks
Right,
when they played Juventus.
right.
Wolves went over to Juventus and played.
Yeah.
In fact, they took John Charles with them.
Wow.
Yeah, to Juventus. Jim McCalliog played in that final. We've got a
Right,
book out now, Wembley Wins and Wembley Woes. But
right, right.
yeah, Jim was telling me, and Kenny Hibbie as well. To be fair, the story
Yeah.
of John, and as Jim McCalliog recalls it, they they had gone out just for a stroll around Turin,
Right,
going into like all the shops and having a feel of what it was like. Word got round that John Charles was in town, and Jim
right.
said as we were walking through these streets, windows were open and it was Charlo, Charlo, and
Wow.
they absolutely adored it. He was the
Yeah, yeah.
king of Turin. While John Charles was in Italy, he was second only in popularity to the Pope.
Right.
Yeah, and Capello, by the way, never come for the return leg at the Molineux,
No, no.
strangely enough.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine.
Hmm.
But I don't, something. Well, I mean, you talked about the overseas things. I mean, one thing was just a delight to put in the book was the Aldo Poi goal. You know,
Yeah.
for Rosario Central. I mean, it's just the most. It is without doubt the most celebrated goal of all time,
Why
and
is
most
it though,
people.
Dan?
Because it was their first piece of silverware, and
Got ya.
I mean, he quite rightly said that they'll remember this goal for the rest of their lives, and you know the fact that it's still being celebrated is something. But it was their first. That was it. It got them through to the final. He scored the Palamita diving header
Yeah.
against Newell and got them through for the Argentine Nacional Championship, and then they won the final against San Lorenzo 2-1 to get their first bit of silverware. But that goal. I mean, it's annually celebrated when on December the 19th. They moved Christmas Day to July for his birthday, which is his birthday. So they celebrate Christmas Day when he was born. I mean, and the lunacy carries on. In '97, Che Guevara's son, who was a Rosario fan, recreated the goal. Was part of this recreation of the goal that happens annually and stuff like this. I mean, the thing is, it was a joy to write that,
Yeah.
and they're the sort of things that, as you say, that story that links in with the spitting and so on and so forth. It just seemed to constantly reach out and touch other things and other stories, and you think, this is insane, this story with Poi on this, but it's fabulous. It
How
just
did
shows
you
you what
come
the game
across
really
that
means.
story?
Just stumbling across different bits. Someone might mention something to me. I was asking, just researching. The research
Mm.
was heavy and a lot with it. And just watching hours of watching videos and updates, and suddenly something would crop up, and you think, "Hang on, what's that?" and make a note, and then go back and research it again, and so forth. So it was just that sort of thing, just those. I mean, there's been a lot of things. Oh God, I've forgotten his name now. That have gone. Well, Frank Worthington passing away. Adams, the French, the sleeping footballer. Jean-Pierre. I'll get his name. Sorry, my brain's gone into. I'm still thinking about Aldo Poy. No, he was a French. Bear with me. I'll get it while we're in the chat. There's a French defender, fabulous player who had went for a sort of a minor operation at the end of the season and ended up with blood clot and spent 30 odd years in a coma.
Right.
He died recently. Yeah, give us a minute. I'll have a look. I do apologise. I should have it to hand, but I've only made a few scraggly notes.
It's more than me, mate.
Well, so these sort of things that started to crop up, and they say with the Poy thing, but just. And so I'm reading this about this thing and how they celebrate and how they move. And then you stumble across things sort of an Ernesto Guevara, the youngest son of the freedom fighter Che Guevara, celebrates the goal. And you think, how on earth, but it just seemed to want to work. It just seemed to want to fall into my. It was Adams, Jean-Pierre Adams. So he just died recently. He was a French footballer for Nimes, who went. It's a fantastic international. Beckenbauer praised him as this player's, as just a superb defender, and they're going to be fantastic. Went in for a minor operation. The anaesthetist made a mistake, a routine knee operation, and then spent the next sort of 40 years in a coma. And I've mentioned that piece about that because it links about sort of other sections in the book, and then he's passed away, so we had to sort of go, we better update that. So there's been a lot of these things. So with Frank coming up, with poor old Stan going through what he's going through, and sort of currently joining in trying to get a stand named after Stanley at Loftus Road and stuff like that. But all these things, it just seemed to keep linking back into the book, and it was, I don't know, something was probably telling me that it had to be written somewhere along the line. Something was pointing at it. There were too many things that needed to be brought back, and spoken about, I think.
Goal of the season, 71-72.
Well, you want me to give you it, or are you going to tell me what it was?
Cracker, wasn't it? What a cracker. Pat Howard said it whizzed past my ear, and I thought, hang on, that's got half a chance.
I mean, what a thing. But again, the birth of that, and that was the birth of John Watson.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So it's, and he mentioned that. I chatted to him about it in the forward. He said he spent the night after that sort of listening with the players and going through it all, and sort of just was the start of his career, really. It was meant to happen. And it was only going to be. He only covered the game as an afterthought. They said, "Oh well, come on, we won't worry about that." Blah 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 blah. So, that they won't get through. And then, bosh, it did. And he was, right. So in the 40, he says, someone turned around to him and said, it'll probably be 2-0 to Newcastle. Well, it wasn't, was it?
No.
And as he puts in that, Ronnie Radford's goal changed my life. So it was. He'd driven Ricky George up there for the game, and then spent the night with Ricky George listening to American Pie. He said in the evening, it was a big single of the time. So that sort of became, something that tied into other things that just kept rolling. It just kept rolling. So, yeah. I mean, it's just something that struck me that we were talking about. I want to cram him in as much as I can, bless him, Stan. And I know you had an interview with Malcolm McDonald, and chatted to him about some bits and bobs. So there's even a little link there, because in the pinks, the football pinks that come after matches and stuff like that, and the final pink for the Newcastle Evening Chronicle went back to Supermac's first game.
Yep.
And that was the tribute cover that they placed on it. And of course, there's the famous photo of a bet that Stan had with Supermac when he went past him, having scored a goal in the last minute to either win the game, and he's laughing at McDonald and jumping up and down.
It's a great
it's a fantastic. They'd had a bet, hadn't they? Then McDonald won the money in the end because Stan had broken his leg, I think, but he still took the bet. But who would be the leading goal scorer?
He never got paid.
No, of course he didn't.
It would have been, Stan, you owe me 500 quid. Come in, I'll help you look for it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Stan never paid out any bet. But I
No, no.
think they had an individual bet that day. I
Right.
certainly did when QPR played at
Yeah.
Newcastle, because I
Yeah.
think Shanksy had to stay up there and collect the winnings. I mean, them boys would bet on anything.
Oh yeah.
Don
Yeah.
Shanks and Stan Bowles,
Yeah.
absolute Queen's Park Rangers legends.
Yeah, definitely. But I thought that was. I just thought even there, these things still tie in. So we've got Paul Stan now, with Woody's, and it still links in, goes back to sort of the Pinks that were huge in those days, and it just seemed. And of course, that then goes back to McDonald's sort of first match with a hat trick against Liverpool in that season. It was just strange. I don't know how to describe it really. I
Did
was
you hear
very
the
lucky
story
that I
about
stumbled
that?
across it.
Did you hear
Go
the
on.
story about that hat trick?
No, go on.
I mean, what that was, as I say, it was Malcolm's debut,
Yes, yeah,
and
yeah,
scored the hat trick. But
yeah.
they was singing Supermac, Supermac Superstar. How many goals have you scored so far? And he said, and it inspired me to get me hat trick goal. But
Wow.
Ray Clements, he he had a goal kick
Right.
that was quite poor. And
Yeah,
Malcolm
yeah,
latched onto it. Clem come out and give him a right shoeing.
yeah.
And Malcolm said he done that on purpose because he didn't like players scoring a hat trick past him. But Malcolm got knocked out and they had to take him back to the
Right.
treatment table.
Yeah, yeah.
And when he woke up, Malcolm said, "Do you know, I've had the weirdest dream. I just scored 3 goals against Liverpool." And he said, "Malcolm, you did." But yeah,
Brilliant.
he got a right
Brilliant.
clattering.
Brilliant.
But what a legend Malcolm McDonald was.
Yeah,
And of
yeah,
course, while
yeah.
we're talking on Stan, arguably the worst competitor on Superstars
Ah,
ever.
but the best,
Oh,
as you know what I mean.
absolutely,
I
absolutely.
don't remember anything about Superstars apart from that. Of
Oh, he's
getting
just.
being
I
called
mean,
off his bike. But
yeah. I mean, the shooting was tremendous, wasn't it?
yeah,
It was a
yeah,
little bit like Only Fools and Horses, Del Boy, when he's
yes.
doing the clay pigeon and he's moving around with that gun. I think Stan picked it up and he shot the table, didn't he?
He shot the table, yeah,
Yeah,
shot the table. And then he rolled the canoe, nearly drowned
yeah, yeah,
himself with
yeah,
that.
yeah,
And apparently he said, "Oh, I can't do any of this heavy stuff because I've hurt my back." He
yeah,
just
yeah.
didn't want to do it. But he just got hammered the night before and was just over to buggery.
But
Didn't take it
that was
seriously and didn't anyone else
Shanksley.
took it seriously. Yeah,
That was
yeah,
Donald. He goes, "Come on, Stan, we can earn a few quid here going to
yeah,
Superstars." But it was just, I mean, if you're going to do it as bad as what you can. But Stan had that personality
yeah,
that he could
yeah,
just pull it off. I mean,
yeah,
there's very few players like Stan Bowles.
yeah,
Again, I
yeah.
don't think people understand how fantastic a player he was and how big a character. And he
Yeah.
ended up in the Old Bailey as well, didn't they, in the
He ended.
70s?
He got into all sorts of scrapes, and with the Quality Street gang and all sorts of bits and bobs. But he didn't
Oh,
care.
yeah. No,
That was just him. He just went, "Oh, they're my mates. I like hanging around with them."
yeah. I mean, he did say at one stage, "Well, I earn more money off the mob than what I do
Yeah,
playing football."
yeah, probably. Yeah,
But again, just that larger than life character,
yeah,
Stan Bowles, and
yeah.
uh, and and Don Shanks, and blimey, them two boys, they then half get up to a lot of no good stuff. But
Well, exactly, and that's part of the folklore of at Loftus Road. I mean, those the names are still hailed today,
mm,
and so they should be, and that sort of that whole era, as you said, the 70s just have it, and seemed to have it all, and maybe the fact that we weren't playing in international competitions made it better. I don't know. Maybe it made it more ours, and closer to home and more personal. I'm not 100% sure, but as I say, it was just enjoyable and just so enjoyable writing this book. I just wish everything else was this enjoyable.
and in
I just,
Stan's book, Stan says, him and Shanksy, we were like two cartoon characters that
yeah,
went through life leaving a trail of destruction behind
yeah,
us.
yeah. I've never. I mean, you want to read a book, you don't read it. You're laughing
It's
so
one of the
much
best
when you
books I've
read
ever
it.
read in my life.
It's absolutely brilliant, isn't it? You just
It's
spend the whole
so
time
funny.
laughing. Yeah, and it might be some of them might be tall yarns, but who cares? They're brilliant. It's brilliant to read.
But again, I
Absolutely brilliant
think
to
it's
read.
like the Robin Friday book. There are stories about Robin Friday that there's there's not many people that can say whether they were true or not.
Right,
There's
right.
there's not much validation on stuff that Robin Friday did, but
Yeah,
people that know him
yeah,
say, well, it probably is true knowing him. Some of the stories are true, and I think with the same as Stan, some of it might have been embellished a little
But
bit,
you,
but
but you want
probably
them to
not.
be true.
But
But you want
probably
them to be
not.
true. Yeah,
Absolutely,
no,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, this is an era. I mean, we mentioned. I mean, why not talk about the Mavericks because they were just wonderful. But you talk about like Frank Worthington. I mean, Frank Worthington was told by went away, came to Liverpool, high blood pressure for the signing, was sent away.
Apparently.
Yeah, apparently sent away, and they said, right, you need to go away and look after yourself. Your blood pressure's a bit too high. I think he had some sort of liaison with a Swedish woman and her daughter or something like that, or a sister. Drank himself mad, came back, and his blood pressure was higher than it was when he went away. And the club sent him away on a holiday so he could relax.
But where did
He
they
didn't
send
care.
Frank?
He didn't care. Oh, it was Ibiza, was it?
No, they sent him to Magaluf.
That's it, Megaloof.
He
Sorry,
went to
yeah, I couldn't-
Magaluf.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, and
But-
Frank, because I says to Frank, I'd interviewed Frank, and I says, Frank, was it high blood pressure? He says, yeah, it was high blood pressure, son, and
Yeah.
give me a wink.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but that whole, just even that in itself, that would have been the biggest sort of transfer of his career.
Yeah.
I'm not bothered. I don't care. I'm enjoying my life. And of course that transferred onto the terraces. The fans knew they were enjoying themselves. And all the clubs had those players. And if they, even if they might not have had the Maverick, they had the player that made them smile. And that's, I think, really, I hope and I believe that anyone that flicks through 71, 72 will smile a lot and they'll think, I wish I was back there. And for me, really, it was a pleasure to be back there, to be able to spend hours and hours and hours over the last sort of 4 or so years just back where, the times were better, really, for me. And it was full of fun and also madness on all sides, absolute madness. I mean, you quite correctly say it was a lot of black and white TV, but bloody hell, the football was colour, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And QPR are trying to get that stand. I wouldn't name a stand after Stan Bowles. I would name Loftus Road after Stan Bowles, because to this day, and I think if QPR go for another 200 years, they will never have another player like Stan Bowles playing for them. He was just, as soon as I ever think about Queen's Park Rangers, it's Stanley.
Yeah.
And I would love to see all grounds with stands named after Hudson, Bowles, George, Worthington, because those players should never, ever be forgotten because they were special.
Absolutely. And you're right. It's just, for us, he's synonymous. I mean, I saw somebody the other day, someone was saying, we would struggle to keep a player like Stan Bowles now. We would never sign a player like Stan Bowles now. It wouldn't happen. No. It wouldn't happen. So it won't happen in my lifetime again. So, why not remember those? And they were beautiful players, just beautiful to watch and just a joy. It makes your heart skip now when you even thinking about them, or when you're lucky enough to watch, as you say, the Dennis Waterman programme or a Big Match Revisited or whatever. I had a friend text me the other day, West Ham QPR's on. The pit, you can't see the pitch. There's a tiny bit of grass in one corner. Stan is magnificent. You got Bonzo on the pitch. They're just brilliant players. But the Mavericks, he was on form that day, and you think, on a pitch where there's not one blade of grass on it.
And of course, in '73, after the FA Cup final, when Sunderland were parading it, Stan had a bet with Don Shanks and he'd knock the FA Cup off its pedestal, and he did.
Yeah. Which he did, yeah. Oh, God bless him. Absolutely brilliant. But
again, you wouldn't get that today. Back in the 70s, the players were on the front page, the back page, and they were on News at 10 as well. That's what they were like.
Absolutely. I mean, I was watching Porridge the other day, and there's a I don't know what it is, a red top of some description, the Sun or the Mirror, whatever, back page, Bowles flare up, blah, blah, blah. And they're reading the Cell, and you think, that was it. That was the times, and it just, it's sadly gone, but it's not, because it's in my book.
But the
for
players,
1 season only.
But the players would be on Morecambe and Wise shows. They would be on Parkinson. They would be in the TV. Because, I mean, back in them days, we only had 3 channels, of course. But the footballers were on there. They were in our living rooms. They were in all the magazines, the girly magazines. Well, I don't mean girly magazines like that.
No, I know what you
but
mean.
I mean, like Jackie, because my sister had magazines like Jackie. Footballers would be in that. Footballers would be in Looking. They would do promo shots with,
Yeah.
a page, well, it wasn't so much page 3 in those days, but a pretty girl with bowls. I mean, he had that
Yeah.
photograph when he had next to nothing on, didn't he?
Yeah, yeah, and there's Raquel Welch in one of the kits and all this sort of stuff.
She turned up at Chelsea, and
That's it. That's it. Yeah,
Uddy
yeah.
says, I always give us. He failed it with Raquel. You know, but again, it was like Dickie Darling, one of the directors at Chelsea, in that long room at Chelsea.
Yeah,
They had A-list stars that would turn up
yeah,
at Chelsea and down the King's Road. You ain't
yeah.
got the King's Road now. It was
No,
a different time. It was
yeah,
Those were halcyon days. We
yeah.
will never ever see anything like the 70s
No,
again.
no, no.
Never,
Exactly.
sadly.
No,
Any
no.
favourite story that you discovered, a little nugget that you didn't know before?
I think the Poi story and
Yeah,
the French story. I think especially the link with Robin Friday. I think that really that was, I think that was, and he's royalty down there. You know, he's royalty down there, and then I think the Poi one really got me, and just the other bits was just the transfers again, the things. I mean, Alan Ball going and all these sort of these transfers. Hartford,
yeah.
another one like Cluffy's. Trying to get him. Revy announced him, and then announced him at the channel that he wasn't.
It was a heart murmur, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Mm,
yeah, and again, the same as Clough. Revy was obsessed with getting him.
mm.
They announced him over the tunnel. No, Revy had said to everyone, yeah, he's signed. That's it. But I think they were playing Leicester, and over the tunnel, but no, he's not going to be here tonight. In fact, he's not signing for us at all. It's just bits like that really. But I think the biggest thing that gave me the biggest joy of that would be the Aldo Poi goal. I think.
Yeah.
I just think there's something truly magical about that.
And there was it was almost an age of innocence, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Before the commerciality coming to
Yeah.
football, like that at Leeds United, that wouldn't have happened today. With Brian
No.
Clough in Storymore, that wouldn't have happened today. And I
No.
think it's a shame because those were things that we still remember 50 years ago. We also
Yeah.
remember the European Cup finals and
Yeah.
Ajax being the crack team
Yeah. Yeah.
in Europe in them days. And then,
Yeah.
of course, it was Bayern Munich before the English
Oh,
clubs
yeah.
started kicking in
Yeah, and didn't we?
77. Oh,
And didn't we?
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean that's insane. I mean again Mr. Clough back to back. I mean that's unbelievable. That story itself. That is just you can't even begin to. But it's basically a second division team.
Yeah.
You can't begin to get your head around that at all. And he nearly did it with Derby as well. I mean he was cheated one step away. So just it's incredible. Go and getting pimples now. The goosebumps now, even just thinking about some of this stuff. So
Well, I can feel it coming through the phone
good,
here.
because it is. Yeah, it is genuinely, man. It was a joy to write it. A joy to write it. It really was.
And I can feel another book coming on about another season of the
Oh, go on,
70s. I don't know.
yeah,
I mean, you're the writer, but you
well,
can't just leave it at the 71-72 season. You have to write another one. I would love a book, with every season, because I've got all the FA Cup finals of the
right.
70s.
Yeah,
So I would love a book of every season,
yeah,
documenting the tables and how things went
yeah,
about, and
yeah, yeah.
international games, how the foreigners, and lovely story out there in Argentina, because they're very anglicised, aren't they?
Yes, yeah,
Argentinian
that's it.
football.
Yeah, yeah. That's the other link with all this stuff. And I mean, you mentioned Juventus. Was it West Brom gave Juventus their kits, or Newcastle gave Juventus their kits? I mean, and in
It was
South
Notts
America,
County.
Corinthians. That was Notts County. That's it.
Notts
So then
County, the old
Corinthians
lady,
had
yeah.
Corinthians had them. So there is a lot of that, the links in. But yeah, especially in South America, there is a lot of that, as you say, the anglicised thing to it. So. Yeah, well, you never know. We will see. I can't say what the idea for the next one is. I've got an idea for another one, but we'll see. At the moment, I'm just hoping 71, 72 sells well and get some nice feedback. So it seems to have so far. As I say, being in that sort of top 20 on Amazon and stuff like that. It's lovely. It's a lovely sort of pat on the back to get that and put a big smile on my face. So. If it sells well, it's out October the 18th. If it starts to sell well and sells well, who knows? But yeah, there is plans for another football book in the pipeline. So, but watch this space.
Well, on the 18th of October, the postman's going to deliver it. It's going to come through my letterbox, and I'm going to
Lovely.
look at it, and I can't wait for it to come out.
Oh, brilliant.
And I can't wait for any football book of the
No,
70s
no,
to
no,
come out. And when I first heard of this book, I thought, wow, a book
no.
of
That's
my
lovely.
favourite season. It's
Oh,
just like manna from heaven. It's just,
that's really admirable. Thank you. That's really lovely to hear. That's really, that means a lot, actually. And I hope there's a few more people like yourself. I'm sure there is. I hope there is. I hope that it'll give, Stoke fans and whatever, Luton fans and everybody else a big smile.
well, we
So
started the podcast of how you can purchase the book.
yeah,
We're going to end it with how can people link up with you, engage with you, and you've got a lovely Twitter feed and you're on Facebook
yeah.
as
If
well,
you
and they can look at different things, what happened, for
yeah,
instance, on this day in 1971. Well, it would be 71 now because it was 71-72 season.
yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, fantastic. So,
So
what's your
yeah,
Twitter
they
and
can.
Facebook? How can
I
people
was
link?
I'm just trying to look at it now. I do apologise. I'm having a bit of a breakdown with that. I mean, on my website itself, I've got just dpabrahams.co.uk. Have you got I haven't got the. I should have it written down. I haven't got it written down.
Well,
Sorry.
the easiest way is just Google.
Can I post it to you? Oh, yeah, I was going to say, can I get a
Google
link?
Dan
Can I add to the
Abrams.
link?
I
Oh,
think
sorry.
it's 71
I
72
think,
at
yeah.
71 72,
Hold on a second.
the greatest season.
Hold
And
on. I should know this, but
it will be up on my socials, so it
right,
ain't a
okay,
problem. And I do
right,
share
brilliant.
things because I like to get people involved. And I want artists, I want writers, I want people to
Oh, right, yeah,
engage and
at
buy.
71 season.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I
at
thought it
71
was.
season.
I
Yeah,
thought it
sorry,
was.
yeah. I'm with you.
So you get the money to have in the bank there to fund the next project,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
without writers like you remembering in text those wonderful days, those wonderful seasons, it gets forgotten, and it's
yeah.
too good to be forgotten. So can I thank you, sir, for your
Oh,
time and for your endeavour to keep alive the 1971-72, the greatest season in association football in this country. Thank you, Dan.
my absolute pleasure. Thanks very much for talking to us, Paul. Been a pleasure talking to you and spending some time. Thanks
Lovely.
very much. All the
Cheers,
best.
mate, and thanks
Cheers.
for
Bye bye.
listening, guys. Good night. God bless all. Thank you. Ta-ra, a bit.